This episode is proudly supported by Pepe Sayer Australian Cultured Butter, batch churned from single origin cream.
We've got a culturing process, a fermenting process, an aging process. So the butter will taste very different than, I guess, the average supermarket butter. I like to say we make butter makers butter. Like, this is the sort of butter makers would like to eat, simply because of the slow process in which we ferment and age and get the flavour into it. You know, the natural fermentation that gets all the flavours into the cream, and then once you churn it, you end up with this really rich, flavoursome butter that evolves and changes because it's a live culture that's in the butter as well.
For more information, go to pepesayer.com.au.
It really is life that comes to you, meaning that you get to meet all sort of people from all different backgrounds that will tell you their story, and there's a great cultural exchange.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Italy's influence in Australia is really quite extraordinary. Few, if any, cuisines have become such a major part of the culinary landscape than Italian. But as we know, every region of Italy is different, as is every region of Australia. What's it like creating a regional restaurant in Australia that stays true to its roots and to the region? Isabella Greco is the restaurant manager at Stefano's restaurant in Mildura, Victoria. Isabella, how are you?
Oh, hello, Huck. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm really good. It's great to get you on the show. You're part of a very important regional restaurant in Australia, Stefano's. How are things there at the moment?
Thank you. We had a little bit of a quiet month, but things are well. We've come out of COVID, and we're very glad that we were able to reopen again and continue with our business.
Have things changed quite a bit? You know, it was a little bit difficult for regional restaurants to just pivot and do takeaway, but has the restaurant model changed a lot coming out of the last 3 years for you guys?
No, we are not licensed for takeaway. So we literally closed, and then when we came out of lockdown, every time we would be out of lockdown, we would reopen and then close again and reopen again. But no, nothing, as in the structure of the business, nothing has changed. Pretty much we're doing the same.
What's it feel like for you guys in a regional centre? There was a boom in regional areas when everyone sort of got to travel again. Do you get a sense that diners are a little bit different after that sort of period?
No. We had, of course, coming out of lockdown, a lot like a booming in the sense of a lot more customers. We were full almost every night. But as far as the actual customers are concerned, I think coming to a restaurant like Stefano's always brings a certain expectation. So I think standards have always been pretty high, expectations pretty high, and that is not changed.
Tell us a little bit about the restaurant and what you guys are doing there.
We are set underground in what used to be the cellars of the Mildura Grand Hotel, and it was born as a pop-up restaurant, and currently we're serving a set menu. We don't even print one. It's really what the kitchen cooks daily, what's available locally, what's in season. And we explain every course at the table as we serve. The only thing that is given to the customers is the wine list. So,
what's the challenges with a restaurant model like that? Being the restaurant manager and running things, does it have its challenges?
It does. Probably what I try to do, and the greatest challenge is have everyone know the ingredients and how the food is prepared, because not having a visual reference, it's all done by heart, by memory. But it's actually really fun, and it keeps up really strong engagement with patrons. We talk them through the menu. They're just aware that even through the night the menu can change. But oftentimes, even when Stefano is in the kitchen, he comes up with an idea and there's an extra course, or the main changes completely. It's really improvised and we never get bored. It's very fun. You'll come out of the kitchen with a pot with tripe and says, I've done this today. Do you want to try it? And that is it.
What's that like for you in the front of house, and also with the wine list and matching wines with such a dynamic food menu? Does it tell us a little bit about that?
But it's absolutely fun. There are hilarious moments. One time Maine was supposed to be lamb, and so I can't remember what red wine I had paired with it, and then all of a sudden the diners find themselves with prawns wrapped in prosciutto. And and that just means another extra wine, and you can't. It's fun, and it keeps the conversation really open. It's very dynamic. It's never static, and that is very satisfying. At the end of the day, we're open only for dinner service, and those 3-4 hours of service are really intense. And really fun. I personally enjoy it very much. I've started that way in Stefano's, and I would find it hard to change the structure now. It's just so part of how things are done that
What's it like, sort of running such an influential regional restaurant, but it's also, at its heart, Italian as well in sort of regional Australia. Tell us a little bit about what's involved to be successful doing what you do.
Well, of course, there's a strong Italian identity that comes through Stefano's background and his love for this region. Probably, that's a very hard question. I think for success, probably the creativity and the connection that we are able to establish with our patrons, the fact that we try as much as we can to care for our customers. It's not, of course, it's not cheap compared to other cheaper options to dine at our restaurant, but let's say, it happens, and it happened in the past that someone would come up at the door and say, hey, but I was thinking about spending $50 or $60, and Stefano will sit them anyway and say, hey, I can give, not bargaining, but trying to satisfy the desire that someone has of dining in such an iconic establishment, but not being able to afford it. So there's a compromise that is reached there, and that goes beyond what can you measure with money, if that makes sense. There is, and also something that I've learned through time, that the high standards that we put on ourselves often come as an obstacle to that connection. So great service and is not just, is not serving someone with your hand behind your back. It's there's so much more involved that those, or carrying the plates with just one hand rather than 2 or 3 as the fine dining and silver service. It's much more focused on looking after the team, because if your team is unhappy, you'll have an unhappy experience on the floor, and it automatically reflects on that atmosphere you're trying to create. So I would say key to success, staff that is happy to be there and shows up every day, connection with your clientele, and be able to deliver a moment of joy, basically. We celebrate with them some of the most important like milestone moments, as in the birth of a child or a 50th wedding anniversary. One time we had a little function of 12 people, of 2 grandchildren. They wanted to celebrate their grandmother. They didn't know if that would have been her last birthday. She was 96. So, you try to, the people, if you are open to receive, people will be open in telling you what it is that they want, and we try to cater to those needs and look after them. And even, as I was saying earlier, there are people who can't afford the luxury of a place like ours, because of course it is a bit of a luxury, but not to belittle them, but make them feel welcome and appreciated for both their business and the idea that they have of us, the effort of coming to us rather than choosing someone else.
It's such an iconic venue, and as you say, it's a destination as well. But how important is the support of locals to the restaurant like Stefano's?
It is important. Stefano has been, advocating for Mildura all around the country. His last show on SBS Food Network was a nod to this region, Mildura Football of Australia, and show how much is done in Mildura, and what a big agricultural and food culture there is. But I have to, I can't help but say with a little bit of sadness that our major, that the majority of the customers that we have are visiting Mildura. There isn't much, like the biggest part, let's say. There are a lot of locals, but a lot of people that come even from Perth or, Queensland or Adelaide, Melbourne, Sydney, more than locals, I guess. Probably it's like, when you live in a place, you kind of let it slip and you think, oh, you can always go there. But probably when you visit, you have much more of a focus on what you want to do and what you want to see.
Tell us a little bit about Mildura and the region and its producers and what you love about it.
Well, again, Mildura being in the country, part of regional Victoria. Well, first of all, it's a city, but it's still a little bit of a small community. So people have that generosity in spirit, in helping and sharing and getting affectionate, that probably it's a bit harder to find in a bigger city. So you get to know basically everyone. There's people are probably humble, and this great connection with earth and seasonality and produce is amazing. We're very lucky to have access to such amazing products that we can serve in our restaurant. It has a great cultural scene, very connected with arts, with music, with tourism in general. Is that correct? Is that answering your question? Or
Yeah, definitely. I want to explore sort of what you do with the front of house and running the restaurant to the standards that you uphold there at such an amazing restaurant. But take us back to when you were young. Where did you grow up, and what sort of role did food play in your family?
But I was born in Calabria, and my family moved to Florence when I was very young, so that's where I grew up. I traveled a little bit. I've lived in Napoli for 5 years, then Milan for a couple, and then I came to Australia. I've been working in hospitality since I was 17, 18. It has always, food has always played, as for many Italians, but not just Italians, probably Europeans, a great role in our lives, as in also not only in the family, like familiar circumstances where, you know, everything happens in the kitchen, whether it's cooking, fighting, studying, telling the biggest news or bad news. It's always been the center of our home. My family somehow has always been involved with hospitality. My older brother worked in a literary cafe in Florence for a few years, and he was telling me all about it, and has always held a great appeal and charm, and culturally wise, not only Italy, as I was saying, but in this case, Italy has always had a very strong relationship with food, painting, and politics and religions. If you see, you can find the first testimonials of food paintings in ancient Rome, and then it gets taken to the painting for par excellence of food, which is the Last Suppers, that are a complex tale of food through the centuries, from the late Middle Ages until the first Renaissance, you know. It's all linked with anthropology, history, and this engraved passion that we have for food.
Are there any sort of dishes or feasts that you recall from when you were young within your family that you can share with us?
The big, of course, celebration, Christmas Eve, all with seafood and fish. We had a very big fireplace in marble. We used to live in a home in Florence, in the center of Florence, from 1400. So you used to have these amazing fireplaces, and you would cook anything in it. And Christmas Eve, we used to have all these, relatives and non-relatives coming over and eating and drinking until, half of January, basically. The party would carry on until after, the Epiphany, which is the 6th of January. Birthdays, of course, would be a great... but every little... in my family, we would find every excuse to celebrate. Of course, food was also key in taking comfort in hard moments. So still today, when I visit my brother in Melbourne, if I'm a little sad, he'll cook for me my favorite dishes from him. So, and you find solace and comfort in food and a glass of wine.
What lured you to Australia?
I was meant to come over I had a tough year back home, and I was meant to get away for 6-8 months to clear my head and come back to Italy with a clearer mind. But then once I got to Melbourne, and as my brother lives there, he's been living there for almost for 30 years now, I had been told, you can work in a farm for 88 days and stay for a second year. And I thought, why not? So Mildura was one of the areas where this could happen. I had been told about Stefano's restaurant, and Stefano was also the only person who gave me a job here in Mildura. I didn't have a CV. He looked at me and he said, "Oh, do you have any experience? Yeah, just put on a white shirt and see what you can do. If we like each other, we'll work together." And my goal originally was to save up, $200, get a bus to Melbourne, and that's it. But then I kept postponing my departure every week and every day, to the point that I went back to Melbourne, and then Stefano called me back and said, "Oh, what are you up to? Why don't you come back?" I went back and he said, "I want to sponsor you." And from that moment on, it's been, 8 years. My I'll leave tomorrow is now 8 years old. So it was like, absolutely, yes, wow.
How much have you changed since living in Mildura and in this role, given you weren't even meant to be here for more than 6 months?
Well, I think change is inevitable. You grow as a professional, of course. I mean, working cheek to cheek with such an iconic personality, but also under a human point of view. Stefano is a very human person, with all of his qualities, but of course all of the faults and shortcomings. And I think from being a little arrogant at the beginning, where you see all this competition and you want to win the awards and you want to be up there, you kind of professionally, I started to realize very quickly with Stefano, undoubtedly, that on top of all the glamour and allure that comes with being recognized, at the end of the day, it's just a company like anybody, any other company made with people who try to put food on the table and pay for the kids' life. So you just show up every day and try to find satisfaction in those jobs that you do repeatedly, almost in an automatic way, and see the human side of it. Probably that has changed. I'm afraid I want to apologize for my English. Some things I translate instantly from Italian to English, so I wonder if what I say makes sense, or is it clear?
You're
okay.
Absolutely. Your English
okay.
is fantastic. It's absolutely no problem at all. Stefano has made a huge impact not only on the region, but as you mentioned before as well, on the TV as well. But do you have any stories of what it's like to actually work with him?
But he's very intense. He's a great of a very strong personality. But we had, probably I shouldn't say this, but plenty of arguments through the years, and slamming doors and screaming and shouting and, swearing. And but the beautiful thing is that, like him, we have this thing in common that once the pressure's off, we're able to reconnect pretty much instantly. We have an argument, and that is the end of it. It doesn't carry on through the days or through the evening. It's just it. But that's also, passion is a bit of a double-edged sword. It's very good when it's good, but it's also very passionate in the bad side of it. So the argument gets very heated, and but you can see him coming in on a Sunday morning, washing the oven, and I say, "Why didn't you say why didn't you tell, the kitchen to do it? And he'll be answering, oh, but the young, the kids, you don't want them, to stay in until too late, and I don't want them to come in on a Sunday. I don't mind it. I enjoy it. It's like a meditation for me. So, that is absolutely priceless. And it teaches you how, the more you get responsibility and the higher you go on the ladder, the more you work. And to be humble is a key. And he would say to me, you should never ask anyone to do something that you wouldn't do yourself in the first place. So the whole thing, lead by example, put in the work. And I remember one day, when I started to work with him, I would go in the kitchen and work in the kitchen to help. To have a better understanding of what it was and what they were doing and how things were prepared. And I can't remember if I was plucking parsley and, peeling capsicums. And I was like, oh, this is, such a menial job, so boring. And he looked at me and said to me, what do you think cooking is? This is cooking. It's the preparation. It's, plucking the parsley and cutting the onions and, making sure that everything is prepped. It's not what you see on your glamorous TV shows. Cooking is this. Go pick the thyme and the rosemary.
You mentioned how important the team is and looking after the team to ensure they deliver on sort of what is required for the guests. Mm-hmm. What do you tell your front of house staff, and how do you train them to do what they do?
Well, a big investment of my time goes into the building of the sequence of service. I think without training, you can't hope for a positive outcome. My first experiences in Italy in hospitality were like being in the jungle, very abusive, very toxic, and there was no training whatsoever. It was up to you to steal the art with your eyes and replicate and learn as fast as possible, because you don't, 2-3 days you're out, and there's a whole line of, people ready to do your job for half the price of what you get. So it gets very draining. And in those situations, I thought to myself, I still remember clearly, that I wouldn't want that to happen if I were ever to be in charge of anything. So training, explaining. Of course, there are a lot of things that you can teach that can only be learned. So it also goes, people are responsible for what they learn as well. I can't open your head and put a memory card with everything, but I can certainly show you the way and teach you what I know, and all for the best. So sequence of service, explaining, also on top of trying to get everyone to point A to point B. Sometimes I hear teachers shouldn't be inspiring, they should just be teaching. That's their job. But I feel that if you can instill some sense of pride, because it's not often seen as a career, as a goal. A lot of times people would do this job while they're at uni to, save some money and then move on to better things, where for me, this is a choice. I left law in order to pursue this career. So I think if you can instill some sense of pride and a sense of importance in what you do, like a higher purpose, probably that's the hardest thing to transmit. That is not just about taking a plate from the past to the table, but a sense of accomplishment at the end of the night when you go home, that you've done a good job and that you've given something of yours to your customers. Probably that's even a harder part to do, but I try to do that. Of course, I'm not always successful. it's a constant work in progress. And probably that is the most challenging part, because I'll go home and read about the story of, spaghetti with tomato. And when we serve a bowl with spaghetti and tomatoes, I feel all pride, because it's the result of centuries of exchange and the Industrial Revolution, industrialization of spaghetti, tomatoes from America, potatoes from America, the buffalo, mozzarella. There's a whole story that now we take for granted, of course, with the modernity and contemporaneity of technology and everything that we have nowadays. But before we could reach what we have now, we talk about, of course, centuries of development and revolution. So sometimes it's hard to try to infect everyone with that kind of passion and sense of, high, I wouldn't say culture, but, a high purpose, something that goes beyond working and get your money out of it. But yeah, sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Do you feel a sense of obligation to traditional Italian cuisine and also Australian ingredients? Like what's the process for you? Is it a tough thing to balance with a restaurant like Stefano's?
Absolutely not. Stefano his cooking comes from the tradition of cucina povera, and in a region like Mildura, it's not that hard to come by the ingredients that we need. But Italian identity, it's a bit of a controversial topic, and I think that if even Italian people were to understand that the mechanic involved in Italian food culture are so much more complex and so much the result of constant contamination, and you understand that Italian at the end of the day doesn't really exist. Oh my God, what did I just say? But yes, there you go. You see like spaghetti with tomato, or the use of, potatoes or olives, mandarins. We talk about if you see the extent of Roman Empire, it's very, very wide, and that allowed a lot of ingredients to travel through. So starting from back, yes, there's no Italian. It's something that is in constant movement, and I wish we were all more elastic and we could bend. There is a very interesting Italian podcast that crashes all these Italian myths about what we think, and we are so fundamentalist about Italian dishes and Italian culture, and instead you realize how a lot of it is this story of a tale, marketing, and everything that comes with the sense of identity and nationality that at the end are very separate things. Yeah.
Well, you're part of a very, very important restaurant in Australia and doing amazing things here. What is it that you love about what you do?
I feel that the restaurant intended as hospitality really puts together all sorts of different things from, it's like a melting pot of all the things I love. That is art, music, science, politics, and you can see everything, all of that coming through into a restaurant. And it is a business that doesn't allow much room to travel and get out much. But if you are a little in tune with what is happening around you. You get to meet amazing people. And I wrote in a post, it really is life that comes to you, meaning that you get to meet all sort of people from all different backgrounds. They will tell you their story, and there's a great cultural exchange. Probably that is what I love the most. I was a dancer when I was younger, and I think that hospitality, as I personally intended, probably a lot of people would be with me in this. It is show business. I feel we are in the entertainment business, and I think that is also part of what I love in this industry.
Well, Isabella, it's an absolute honour to have you on Deep in the Weeds today, to hear just a part of your story. I think we'll have to catch up again.
I am honoured.
And dive into the world of Italy down the track a little bit more. But,
I would love that. I would love that. Thank you.
Please keep in touch and we'll catch up again soon.
Thank you. Ciao, grazie.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.